In one of my cases in the federal court, the Chief Justice of Sabah and Sarawak, Richard Malanjum, said to me, "Just tell us, what is your killer argument? No need to talk about everything. Just tell us about the one thing that will win your case." Sometimes that's all it takes. One thing so powerful, convincing, and compelling that it will turn a skeptic into a believer. Peter, the disciple of Jesus, was a man of the world. A seasoned fisherman, he had seen many things in his life. He has met many people and experienced many things. He was not the kind of man who would fall for any story that anyone would tell him. He had seen his teacher arrested, tried, and executed publicly. There was no doubt in anyone's mind that Jesus was dead. If there was one true thing about the Roman soldiers, it is that they know how to kill a man. And if they executed a person, he stays dead. So can you imagine Peter's shock on the third day after Jesus' death when some women told him and the other disciples that Jesus had risen from the dead? Peter had to check this out for himself. He ran to the tomb of Jesus, and this is what the Bible records for us. Then Simon Peter went straight into the tomb. He saw the strips of linen lying there, as well as the cloth that had been wrapped around Jesus' head. The cloth was still lying in its place, separate from the linen. Finally, the other disciple who had reached the tomb first also went inside. He saw and believed. Peter looked into the tomb and saw something. As a result of what he saw, he believed. Peter did not need tons of proof. He didn't need a long argument. The Bible said he saw and believed. What was that thing that was so convincing that Peter believed, had all his doubts erased with just one look? What was in the tomb? There should be a body there, but it wasn't there, that's for sure. Peter saw some grave clothes, and that convinced him. Let's look at how Jesus was buried. Later, Joseph of Arimathea asked Pilate for the body of Jesus. With Pilate's permission, he came and took the body away. He was accompanied by Nicodemus, the man who earlier had visited Jesus at night. Nicodemus brought a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 75 pounds. Taking Jesus' body, the two of them wrapped it with the spices in strips of linen. This was in accordance with Jewish burial customs. It was a custom to wrap a corpse with long strips of linen from the feet up to its neck. The linen strips would go round and round the body and hold the arms close to the body. A separate piece of cloth the shape of the size of a towel would be wrapped around the head. Thus, the linen strips for the body are separate from the cloth wrapping the head. This would be how a body prepared for burial would look like. What if Peter had seen something like this? If the linen strips are found in an untidy pile, it would mean that someone sneaked into the tomb, unwrapped the body and threw the grave clothes in a big pile and left with the body. But John's account said that Peter saw the strips of linen lying there, as well as a cloth that had been wrapped around Jesus' head. The cloth was still lying in its place, separate from the linen. Luke's Gospel described what Peter saw as follows. Peter, however, got up and ran to the tomb. Bending over, he saw the strips of linen lying by themselves, and he went away wondering to himself what had happened. This means that the grave clothes were not in an untidy pile. It was found neatly in its original position, where they were originally laid with Jesus' body inside. For example, the cloth that was wrapped around Jesus' head was not unwrapped, but remained in a wrapped position and lying in its place. That is where the head was supposed to be, and separate from the linen that wrapped the body. The grave clothes had not moved from the original position where they were laid. Just imagine the lifeless body of Jesus wrapped up the customary Jewish way. If God raised Jesus to life, how do you think Jesus would get out of yards of linen strips tightly wrapped around him and encrusted with 75 pounds of spices? I believe Jesus' body was transformed by the power of God, and as he came to life, his body passed through the grave clothes like vapor or smoke. What would be left would be the grave clothes still bearing the shape of a body, but crumpled or collapsed because the body inside had disappeared. The linen cloths were still wrapped and untouched. They were still wound up as if a body was inside, except that there was no body inside. The wrapping around the head was just above the grave clothes, still in the position where Jesus' head lay, except the wrapping had crumpled but still retaining the shape of the head. Is this credible? Well, later on, the resurrected Christ would pass through locked doors. A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." So that was how Jesus got out of his grave clothes. What Peter saw convinced him that a miracle had happened. The condition of the grave clothes told him that Jesus' body dissolved, leaving the grave clothes behind. This could not be staged. This could not be a deception. Dear friends, Jesus is alive. He has risen from the dead and is now seated at the right hand of God. What I have shared is only one of the proofs that Jesus rose from the dead. Mankind has been struggling with death since the dawn of history. Only one man has conquered death, Jesus. What implication would this have on your life? Please think about that. If you'd like to be notified of future videos on proof of living, please click on the subscribe button below the screen.